Hillary is now uh, Hillary's trailing Marco Rubio in a key swing state, which is Colorado, by double digits. In fact, she's trailing the top three candidates, Rubio, Ben Carson, and Trump, by double digits in that state, if the election were held there.
Yeah, well, Trump is now beating her nationally in polls.
Yeah.
But Sanders beats Trump nationally in polls.
Which will be interesting to see how the Democrats react to that. Yeah, so I really think this, these alerts coming up here. I really think that she's starting to ease towards the precipice where she's in real trouble. So we shall see what happens. But yeah, on the refugee thing, I think she's going to be in an awkward position about this whole thing, because she essentially was part of the group that helped churn things up and mess things up in the Middle East. And Obama, he's just going to ride out. He's like, I've already left the building.
Right.
And as long as nobody attacks us, we won't do much.
Well, it's definitely changing the dynamics of things, and ironically, people like Trump, it basically gave what you just said in the other segment about his solution for the refugee problem is pretty much exactly yours is, and Trump's is pretty much the same.
Yeah,
did you know that?
No, I did not know that. I didn't know that. I didn't see what he was saying.
I mean, he said you got to wipe them out, and you have to build a big, nice, safe place in the Middle East, and take their oil.
Yeah, and take the oil to pay for it. Why shouldn't we? I mean, heck, we give everybody free passage through the entire oceans of the world, where the U.S. Navy is the only law there is. I mean, we would have the Barbary Coast all over again if we were to pull out. And the Barbary Coast is called the Barbary Coast because it happened right there. You remember, with all the way back to Thomas Jefferson.
Well, it's gonna be crazy, and Hillary is getting a little pushback on her using 9/11 to defend Wall Street money, which was pretty, and that she's a woman is getting some pushback from that, surprisingly, because she gets pushback so little from the mainstream media, except Fox. So it's still, anything can happen, really.
Did you hear what Rupert Murdoch said about the Democratic debate?
No.
He said it was embarrassing. It was pathetic. That's what he said. Now, of course, it's self-serving, because Fox, of course, had the Republican one, which he thought they did a great job on, which I think they did a decent job.
Well, I mean, the Republican, the debates sort of come down to, for the Republicans, it's just basically a big advertisement for Republican philosophy and stances, and bash Obama. The Democrats, they talk more about issues, I think, but it's also a Hillary advertisement. At least the first one was.
Yeah. I think CBS certainly did a much better job than CNN. I give them that credit. But still, there was very little substance there. Incidentally, the real thing I want to find out, too, is what's going on with the update with the FBI investigation into the emails. And I suspect that the real gist of what's in those emails does not have to do with Benghazi. It has to do with other things, perhaps even the Clinton Foundation, that may have crossed many lines that they never should have crossed.
Right. Well, that is probably all the personal emails that got deleted.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. She probably didn't see this coming. Thought, well, who's going to question what I do? Yeah. So yeah, there's always a skeleton. I mean, the skeletons don't stop falling, but maybe there's a big, ugly, rotting skeleton that just comes out. Just a lot of typical skeletons, but then just a really big, bad, ugly one. I also like to point out, too, that I really think you're right about Ted Cruz. And you could see that he's also a big, big recipient of Wall Street money. And his wife is a big Wall Street player as
Yeah.
well. So you might be right in that everything he's doing is just shtick as a means for power. All his hardcore religious stuff could all just be shtick.
Yeah.
And all his "I'm standing up to everybody" could all just be a long con shtick to get power. You know?
It could very well be. I mean, he seems awfully calculating to me. Now he's a very good speaker and so forth, but there's a difference between being genuine and being calculating.
Yeah, well, he's very cunning. He's very, very cunning, and he could be in. It could all just be a big con that the big boys are putting him in.
Yeah.
I mean, the big boys are hedging their bets on everybody, and
Yeah.
and the only
They've got
person they're not hedged on are Trump and Bernie.
Yeah.
They're hedged with everybody else.
And our poor Bobby Jindal dropped out of the race, so
Well, it's not his time. It's not his time. Maybe 8 more years it'll be his time again, or his time is over, or his time as host of a show on Fox, or working for a Koch brother think tank. That could be his time.
Somehow I don't think the Koch brothers are the type to have think tanks, but or it could be a foundation.
Yeah, or a foundation, and they just pay him to be crazy and go, just keep being crazy, because the crazier you are, the more sane it seems everybody else. And exclamation point now, I mean, he was being pressed about, well, how do you know if somebody's Christian? You know, to let, Christian refugees. Well, you can tell. You know if they're Christian. Well, how do you know? Well, you know. I don't know. Well,
Oh my God. Well, he's quite the candidate, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the establishment. I don't know. Who knows what anybody's thinking? But it's like a roulette wheel, and everybody is green. Like this is a kind of a cool analogy that I think of it. It's like a giant roulette wheel, and Republicans are black, and Democrats, or no, Republicans would be red, and Democrats would be black. And they're just putting chips on all the colors, and the only thing that's green, there's there's 2 green things on the wheel. There's 2 of them, or 1 on a roulette wheel.
I forget. I don't play roulette, so
Yeah. Well, okay. Let's just say there's 2 green. It would be Trump and Sanders, and everyone else is red and black, and they're just putting all their bets on the red and black line. That's probably not going to be a green.
Yeah.
And so big money is covering Hillary. They're covering Carson, they're covering exclamation point. So the banks have got their person no matter who wins.
Yeah.
So, but it's like a new monkey wrench gets thrown in all the time, and I almost think you're right that the whole thing in the Middle East, the whole Syria thing, is not good for Clinton, because she sort of helped architect the aftermath of the Bush mess.
Yeah. Well, and remember, this aftermath now has been going on in the Obama administration for almost 8 years. So you can't say, well, see, the first couple years you can say that. Then you send Hillary in, and it gets messier. You can't dodge that bullet. You can't say, well, I wasn't there long enough, or I didn't do this, or
and she's clearly Secretary of State to pay off a favor, and to help resume build and build the long con.
Yeah.
Build the long con of her ascendancy to the presidency, and just, all right, Obama, look, this is when the big boys pulled him in the room. When he sat down with Mephistopheles and Beelzebub, and they said, all right, we're going to make you president, but there's a few other things we need to talk about.
Yeah.
And and they probably thought, well, we'll just contain what can happen, and a lot happened. So.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming.
So. And
clearly Hillary didn't see it coming. How can this backfire? After all, she did get bin Laden. Remember, she took credit for that.
Yeah, that's right. She did. She is responsible for bin Laden's death. USA, USA, USA. But yeah.
I'm all for that. I'm all happy that they got him.
They got him. But at that point, how much was he really doing anyway? Do you think?
I don't think he was doing that much, but I also think, and this I'm only going by what I read, is that his lieutenants were kind of like, why do you keep wanting to go after the U.S.? This is like, the U.S. was the devil in his mind, where a lot of these other people, the devil were some other people in the Middle East who they really should be going after, and they weren't. So,
well, do you agree with Trump wanting to close a bunch of mosques?
that's retarded. I mean, we live we live in the United States of America. You can't do that.
So that's one area you don't agree with him on this whole middle. No, I mean on this whole Middle East quagmire.
Yeah, that's. However, you don't deal with bullies by like hoping they're not going to be bullies. That doesn't happen. They're going to do what they do, and so the only thing they understand is force. And if you can say, well, now I'm going to be an ISIS person because my father was in ISIS and he got killed by the Americans, so I'm going to do. If that were the only way these things end, no war would ever end. It would simply be ongoing and ongoing. And what happens, I believe, is if, like with the Marshall Plan, the Germans didn't say we have to, build up our, military again and everything. They said, wait, maybe there's another way. Maybe there's a. And this was one of the things why my father wanted me to go to VMI, because he thought Marshall coming up with that realization when everybody was against it.
Mm-hmm.
You can imagine back then it wasn't a popular idea to give money to the Nazis. It was they saw the Nazis. He saw it as Germany. He saw it as Japan. But in Europe in general, I mean,
I think you're totally right with like. What will ultimately solve any problem anywhere is people just want to live their life and have a job and go about their business, and when there's a vacuum in that is when all this extremism starts to bubble up. And that might be a reason why the red states are so extreme, is because there's a lot more poverty there and a lot more frustration with life.
Yeah.
And it wells up. It wells all that extremism up.
Mm.
So it's like, how do you do that?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I honestly don't know. Trump is always firing for effect, but I mean, there are certain. You don't point the gun at your head to fire for effect and say, I'm going to close mosques.
Well, he's climbing in the polls, man. He's shooting back up in the polls.
Well, the reason is because people realize that you have to have a certain sovereignty. That's one of his big things. You have to, but really what it is the U.S. is so powerful, yet we never use our power. We don't do enough good, and we don't do enough for our own country. That's as simple as that. So. And a lot of it really has to do, where this is going back to Bernie, it has to do with capital allocation and who gets allocated the capital. And that's why, that's why Trump wants to lower the rate to the lowest rate in the world, or near there at 15% for corporate tax. The problem is what he doesn't realize is that if they take that money, they're not going to hire more people with that money or even create new products.
They're just going to keep it.
Yeah, they're just going to keep it on their balance sheet. What, right? Corporate balance sheets are the richest they've been in history by a long shot. Banks have the strongest balance sheets by a long shot. This was all great for them, but is it great for the American people? No, and so that's why.
Yeah, it's great for the CEOs and the games that they play with having the corporations buy back the stock. So the stock gains more value, and then they can sell it and pay less taxes, and so the big boys have this big game that they could just keep playing and playing and playing and get richer and richer and richer. And the only money that goes back to anybody else is the bigger lawns that need to get mowed, the more cars that need to get washed, mm-hmm. The more caterers they need at fabulous parties and fabulous houses.
Yeah, it really isn't what made America great. What made America great were people who had new ideas and they could get access to capital. And I mean, look at Thomas Edison. So, and what happens basically, this is how, you know, I don't want to liken it to the fall of Rome, but it's a similar kind of thing where people become complacent and they really don't realize how they got there, and then, but you know, Bernie has ignited that kind of thing where Hillary can ignite that. She's the establishment. Who's she kidding?
No, they're gonna. Hillary as a candidate will mean very low Democratic voter turnout.
Yeah.
Very, very low. There won't be any excitement. There won't be any change. And sadly, as the establishment candidate, nobody in her team is going to back her up. I wish Elizabeth Warren, who has got balls almost everywhere, would just come out and get behind Sanders or somebody, or say something. You
I
know.
told you, I think she's playing the political game of, you know, 4 years from now, maybe I'll run for president kind of thing, because Hillary will be, you know, washed up by then. Well, we shall see. But yeah, I think more voices are better, unless, you know, Bob, we really didn't need Bobby's voice, I guess, Bobby Jindal. But yeah, let's see what happens. But it'll be interesting, and hopefully, but as we predicted, getting back to the ridiculous state in France right now, as we predicted. You know, the prime minister said, "Get action service on the line and cut him loose." You know, we have a pit bull. Let's take the leash off and let him go. And you heard they found a rocket launcher, for God's sakes. What airplane were they going to take down with that?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's time to put the pedal on the metal and go after those guys and gals. But anyway, there it is.